The quiet stirring within. Have you ever had that peculiar sensation that something inside you is about to erupt like a pressure building, quietly under the surface, but you can't quite name what it is? Picture this life is moving forward as it should. You're checking off the boxes, fulfilling obligations, putting on the face that fits the occasion. Everything seems fine on paper. But then unexpectedly, something stirs. A flicker, a flame. It's not random. It's visceral. An inner voice rises, not timidly, but with urgency, shouting from deep within, "Wake up. There's more for you than this." That spark, that inner summons, is precisely what Carl Jung spent his life exploring. And what he found wasn't locked away in academic jargon or cryptic philosophical texts. No, it was something intensely personal, something already within us. It lives quietly at the core of who we are waiting for us to notice. And when we finally do, when we allow that buried truth to emerge, our sense of self shifts. Suddenly, the idea of being unstoppable isn't just poetic, it becomes possible. This isn't just a conversation, it's a gentle but firm nudge, a call to peel away the mask, to face the truths we've been taught to suppress, to awaken what's been waiting in stillness. Tell me, how many times have you felt off kilter, as though something in your world isn't quite right? Maybe it's a relationship that looks perfect to others, but when the door closes and the screen turns off, all that remains is silence and a quiet ache. Or maybe you've achieved the title, the recognition, the role others envy, and yet every morning you feel a weight in your chest that no achievement seems to lighten. You're not broken, you're not being irrational, and you're certainly not weak. What you're feeling is real. It's your deeper self trying to reach you. Carl Jung wouldn't dismiss that feeling, he would celebrate it. He would tell you that your unconscious is whispering messages your conscious mind hasn't been ready to hear. Until now, let's not rush this moment. Take a breath, inhale deeply, then release. Ask yourself honestly, is there something in my life that doesn't belong anymore? Something draining me? Something I've been afraid to name? Because today we're not looking outside for answers. We're going inward to the place where the most profound shifts occur, whispers in the silence. It's a strange thing, the way we can live among noise and yet feel surrounded by silence. You laugh when you're supposed to, you show up, do your job, say the right things. But inside there's a quiet unease, like something essential is missing. Not broken, just misplaced. And that misplaced feeling, it's not just a mood, it's a message. Jung believed the soul speaks in subtle ways. It doesn't shout over the volume of the world. It waits for silence, for stillness, for you to finally pause long enough to hear it. We often think confusion or discomfort is something to fix or escape. But what if it's something to explore? That restless tension, that quiet emptiness after a party, or in the moments just before sleep, it's not meaningless. It's your psyche asking questions your outer world can't answer. Why are you doing this? Who are you really? What do you want? The answers aren't in your follower count or your resume. They're buried under years of conditioning beneath every moment you chose to fit in rather than be seen. And that's where Jung's most radical insight comes into play, his concept of individuation. Not a call to become perfect, quite the opposite. A call to become whole. Wholeness doesn't mean eliminating your flaws. It means owning them. It means no longer denying the parts of you that you've hidden for so long. Maybe you've spent your life trying to be what others needed. The strong one, the funny one, the success story. But under that performance is someone real, someone who's tired of pretending. It's not about abandoning your responsibilities or becoming someone else. It's about finally becoming yourself. That shift begins the moment you stop measuring your worth by how well you fit into someone else's mold. That moment you can stand in front of the mirror, look into your own eyes and whisper, "I am enough. I deserve better." From there, things begin to change. Not instantly, not without discomfort, but undeniably. Your self-esteem doesn't just grow, it awakens. It roots itself not in ego, but in essence, not in appearance, but in awareness. Can you imagine waking up tomorrow not with arrogance, but with certainty? A certainty that you don't have to perform to be loved, that you don't need to earn your right to exist fully. That kind of internal foundation changes everything. It becomes a shield against rejection, a lighthouse in confusion, a soft, steady rhythm that guides you back to yourself even when life tries to pull you away. Take another breath right now. Inhale slowly, exhale with intention. Now ask yourself, what am I still clinging to that is quietly draining me? A role, a relationship, a belief that no longer fits. You don't need all the answers right now. You just need one decision to stop betraying your soul for the sake of comfort. Because the truth is, comfort isn't always safe. Sometimes it's the most dangerous place of all. Whispers in the silence. It's a strange thing the way we can live among noise and yet feel surrounded by silence. You laugh when you're supposed to. You show up, do your job, say the right things. But inside there's a quiet unease, like something essential is missing. Not broken, just misplaced. And that misplaced feeling, it's not just a mood, it's a message. Jung believed the soul speaks in subtle ways. It doesn't shout over the volume of the world. It waits for silence, for stillness, for you to finally pause long enough to hear it. We often think confusion or discomfort is something to fix or escape. But what if it's something to explore? That restless tension, that quiet emptiness after a party or in the moments just before sleep, it's not meaningless. It's your psyche asking questions your outer world can't answer. Why are you doing this? Who are you really? What do you want? The answers aren't in your follower count or your resume. They're buried under years of conditioning beneath every moment you chose to fit in rather than be seen. And that's where Jung's most radical insight comes into play, his concept of individuation. Not a call to become perfect, quite the opposite, a call to become whole. Wholeness doesn't mean eliminating your flaws, it means owning them. It means no longer denying the parts of you that you've hidden for so long. Maybe you've spent your life trying to be what others needed. The strong one, the funny one, the success story, but under that performance is someone real, someone who's tired of pretending. It's not about abandoning your responsibilities or becoming someone else. It's about finally becoming yourself. That shift begins the moment you stop measuring your worth by how well you fit into someone else's mold. That moment you can stand in front of the mirror, look into your own eyes and whisper, I am enough. I deserve better. From there, things begin to change. Not instantly, not without discomfort, but undeniably. Your self-esteem doesn't just grow, it awakens. It roots itself not in ego, but in essence. Not in appearance, but in awareness. Can you imagine waking up tomorrow not with arrogance, but with certainty? A certainty that you don't have to perform to be loved, that you don't need to earn your right to exist fully. That kind of internal foundation changes everything. It becomes a shield against rejection, a lighthouse in confusion, a soft, steady rhythm that guides you back to yourself even when life tries to pull you away. Take another breath right now. Inhale slowly, exhale with intention. Now ask yourself, what am I still clinging to that is quietly draining me? A role, a relationship, a belief that no longer fits. You don't need all the answers right now. You just need one decision to stop betraying your soul for the sake of comfort. Because the truth is, comfort isn't always safe. Sometimes it's the most dangerous place of all. The voice behind the mask. Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt completely invisible? It's a surreal kind of loneliness, being surrounded yet unseen. You laugh when expected. You nod at the right moments. You even share stories, but the real you, the raw, unfiltered version, remains hidden behind carefully curated smiles and rehearsed responses. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you were taught to trade truth for acceptance, to wear a mask the world applauds, even if it smothers your soul. But here's what Jung would tell you: that voice inside, the one growing louder with each forced smile, is not your enemy. It's not rebellion or weakness or melodrama. It's your authentic self suffocating under layers of performance, begging you to stop pretending. You see, we are raised to prioritize belonging over authenticity. We learn to silence our emotions for the sake of peace. We shapeshift to fit rooms we were never meant to enter. And in doing so, we slowly lose touch with the one person who matters most, ourselves. But that self is still there, beneath the fear, beneath the armor, and it's whispering. You might hear it as exhaustion after another conversation that didn't feel real, or as a pit in your stomach when you agree to something you didn't want. Maybe it's that recurring dream or a memory that haunts you for no logical reason. That's not nonsense. It's your unconscious reaching through the cracks, offering you a mirror and asking, "Do you still recognize me?" This is where the real work begins, not the kind you do for praise or promotions, but the deep, unseen work of reclaiming your soul. Jung called it shadow work, and it's one of the most misunderstood but liberating paths a person can walk. Your shadow isn't evil. It's not the villain in your story. It's every part of you you've disowned in order to be accepted: your anger, your envy, your grief, your unspoken desires. It's the you that never got to speak. And the moment you stop running from your shadow, the moment you turn around and say, "Okay, I'm listening," a kind of alchemy begins. You begin integrating. You begin healing. You stop cutting yourself into pieces just to be palatable. And that is where confidence is born. Not from applause or validation, but from wholeness, from no longer needing to hide parts of who you are just to be loved. Imagine standing in front of someone and not adjusting yourself to be more likable, not softening your truth, not shrinking your joy or diluting your pain. That's what it means to be rooted. That's what it means to have unshakable self-worth. And it doesn't start with being liked by others. It starts with being known by you. The power hidden in your shadow. We've all been there, feeling ashamed of something inside us. Maybe it's an emotion that shows up uninvited: anger, jealousy, a wave of sadness with no explanation. Or maybe it's a behavior, a tendency we try to suppress: being too sensitive, too distant, too intense. We label those parts as flaws. We push them down, cover them up. But Carl Jung saw things differently. He believed that what we suppress doesn't disappear. It grows stronger. It waits. It lurks in the corners of our unconscious, influencing our choices, shaping our relationships, and distorting how we see ourselves and others. He called this unseen realm the shadow. Now, most people hear that word and think of darkness, danger, even evil. But that's a misunderstanding. Your shadow isn't evil. It's just unexplored. It's the side of you that you've exiled, not because it's wrong, but because you were told it was unwelcome. And here's the twist that most people never see coming: inside that shadow is your hidden power. Think about it. The anger you repress might be the very energy you need to set boundaries. The envy you feel could be pointing you towards something you truly desire. Even your fear, it's often trying to protect something precious inside you. Jung didn't say get rid of the shadow. He said make it conscious, bring it into the light, get to know it, understand it, because when you do, it stops sabotaging you from behind the scenes. Let's make this real. Have you ever been triggered by someone, maybe a coworker who's arrogant, or a friend who's constantly seeking attention? You feel your blood heat up and you tell yourself it's their problem. But pause for a second. What if the reason they get under your skin is because they mirror something in you, something you've rejected or denied, a part of yourself that you've labeled unacceptable but still exists? It's not about blame. It's about awareness. Because here's the gift: when you explore your shadow, when you stop fearing it, you reclaim parts of yourself that were never meant to be discarded. You start to feel more whole, more at peace, more grounded in who you are. That's when true self-esteem begins, not from fixing your flaws, but from realizing they were never flaws to begin with. They were unspoken truths waiting to be heard. So ask yourself, what part of me have I been trying to hide? What feeling do I push away the fastest? What trait do I hate seeing in others? That's your doorway. That's where your healing lives. You don't become powerful by pretending to be perfect. You become powerful when you embrace everything: your light and shadow, strength and softness, clarity and confusion. And when you do that, when you stop battling yourself just to fit someone else's definition of acceptable, you unlock a deeper kind of self-worth, the kind that can't be shaken, the kind that doesn't depend on applause, the kind that says, "This is me, all of me, and I'm done hiding." The crossroads of becoming. There will come a time, a moment so clear, so pressing, that you'll know things can't stay the same. It won't arrive with fanfare. There won't be flashing signs or a booming voice from the sky. Instead, it will come as an ache, a tension in your chest, a sudden question that breaks through your autopilot. Is this all there is? And that moment is sacred. Carl Jung believed that we each reach a crossroads in life. One path is well lit, filled with signs and directions, safe, predictable, accepted. It's the life others plan for you, the role you were handed, the version of you that people praise. Then there's the other path, the one overgrown with doubt and silence. No clear destination, no guarantees. It's uncomfortable, it's uncertain, and yet it feels like something is calling you toward it. That's the path of becoming. Most people choose the safe route. They do what's expected. They suppress their doubts and call it maturity. They ignore their inner discomfort and name it discipline. But deep down, they know they're drifting away from who they truly are. You don't have to be one of them. The braver choice, the path less traveled, is the one that leads you back to yourself. And it begins not with action, but with awareness. It begins when you stop running from discomfort and start listening to it. When you no longer numb your anxiety with distractions or silence your inner voice with busyness. When you get quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat and ask, what do I really want? What matters to me? Not them, not society, not the version of me I perform, but me. And yes, that path will challenge you. You'll confront parts of yourself you've ignored for years. You'll feel resistance. You'll question everything you believed about success, worth, and love. And still, you'll grow. You'll grow not by becoming someone new, but by shedding what was never truly you to begin with. And here's the truth no one tells you. The pain of pretending is far greater than the discomfort of becoming real. You were not meant to live your entire life inside a character. That moment you finally choose authenticity over approval, something shifts. You begin to move with integrity. Your decisions feel clearer. Your boundaries become firmer, not out of anger, but out of respect for your energy. You start showing up for yourself, not just occasionally, but consistently. And people will notice. Some will applaud you. Others won't understand. That's okay. You're not doing this for applause. You're doing this because your soul can no longer afford the cost of inauthenticity. Imagine waking up and no longer needing to explain yourself, to justify your choices, to ask for permission to be who you are. That is what happens when you take the harder path, the one that requires courage, the one that demands presence, the one that doesn't promise anything except the truth. And that's more than enough. Sacred energy, sacred boundaries. Have you ever walked away from a conversation or interaction feeling inexplicably drained, as if someone siphoned the very life out of you? Maybe it was a colleague who always finds a way to diminish your accomplishments, or a friend who only calls when they need something. Perhaps it's a partner who listens with their ears but not their heart. You may leave those moments tired, irritated, or numb, and you may tell yourself it's no big deal. But over time, something begins to fade. Your spark, your clarity, your sense of self. Carl Jung would say that's not a coincidence. That's your unconscious sending up flares signaling, protect me. Something here is costing too much. Your energy, your time, your attention, your presence isn't just important, it's sacred. It's what fuels your creativity, your compassion, your growth. And when you give it away carelessly or out of guilt, you begin to lose connection with the very core of who you are. Let's be clear, being kind is not the same as being available to everything and everyone. There's a line, and learning where it lies is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself. When you begin honoring your energy, you begin rewriting every rule you were taught about worth. You stop seeing boundaries as selfish and start recognizing them for what they really are, acts of self-respect. You start saying no without apology. You choose presence over people-pleasing. You stop explaining your decisions to those who only hear what they want. You begin to create space, not just in your calendar, but in your soul. Space for rest, for joy, for alignment, for your own voice to rise again unfiltered. And here's the magic: when you clear away what drains you, you make room for what feeds you. You become more intuitive, more focused, more alive. You start attracting relationships that nourish you rather than deplete you. Conversations that spark your mind instead of leaving you second guessing yourself. Opportunities that feel like a yes in your bones. None of this happens overnight. It happens one moment at a time, one small decision at a time, one no that protects your peace, one yes that honors your desire. It's not about living without friction. It's about learning how to respond to the friction that arises with consciousness. So ask yourself right now, what in my life is costing me too much energy for too little return? Who or what am I still saying yes to out of fear rather than alignment? You owe no one your burnout. You owe no one the version of you that's running on fumes. You owe yourself the version that's awake, alive, and rooted in truth. And every time you choose that version, even quietly, even privately, you're building something powerful, a life where self-worth sets the tone and everything else either aligns or exits. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. There's a dangerous myth we're taught from an early age, one that wraps itself in virtue and calls itself love. It's the idea that putting yourself first is wrong, that choosing your well-being over someone else's comfort makes you selfish, that saying no makes you cold, that walking away makes you disloyal. And so we stay. We stay in conversations that drain us, in jobs that shrink us, in relationships that chip away at our spirit like water slowly carving stone. We convince ourselves it's noble, that we're being strong, that maybe if we just try harder, care more, sacrifice a little further, will finally be enough. But Carl Jung would ask you to stop, to breathe, and to consider this instead. What if the most courageous thing you can do isn't to keep giving yourself away, but to finally give yourself back to you? That moment, the one where you stop trying to prove your worth and start living from it, isn't abandonment. It's a return. It's the day you step out of the role you've been playing and into the truth you've been carrying all along. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, people may push back. They're used to the version of you who overextends, over-apologizes, overcompensates. The version who betrays her own boundaries for the sake of harmony. But harmony at the cost of your wholeness is not peace. It's quiet suffering. Choosing yourself doesn't mean turning your back on love. It means choosing love that includes you, the real kind, the kind that sees you fully, the kind that celebrates your presence instead of consuming it, the kind that doesn't require you to go missing in order to be accepted. And it all begins the moment you realize this truth: you are allowed to want more joy, more respect, more authenticity, more connection that feels real, not transactional, not conditional, but soul deep. This is not a rebellion. It's a return to natural order. You are not a supporting character in someone else's narrative. You are the author of your own, and the pen is in your hand, whether you've been using it or not. So if you've been waiting for a sign, if you've been hoping for permission, this is it. This is your moment to declare without guilt or explanation, I choose me. Not because you've stopped loving others, but because you finally remembered to love yourself. And that shift, it will change everything. Not all at once, but unmistakably. It will change how you speak, how you walk into a room, how you breathe, how you respond to disrespect, not with rage, but with removal, not with chaos, but with calm. That is power, and it doesn't come from perfection. It comes from presence, from integrity, from honoring your own soul enough to stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself over and over again and again until it becomes your default setting. When you stop shrinking, the world responds. There's something remarkable that happens the moment you stop dimming your light. It's subtle at first. You begin to speak a little more clearly. Your shoulders relax. You take up just a little more space in a room, not physically, but energetically. You no longer apologize for existing, for feeling, for wanting something more. It's in these moments that your transformation quietly begins. You see, for so long you've been taught to shrink, to make yourself smaller so others don't feel threatened, to downplay your ideas so you don't come off too bold, to hide your emotions so you don't seem too much. But your light, your voice, your perspective, your energy isn't too much. It's exactly what the world needs more of. Carl Jung often spoke of authenticity not as a luxury, but as a necessity, a psychological imperative. He understood that suppressing your truth doesn't just numb your pain, it mutes your power. And when your power is muted, your self-worth begins to decay. The opposite is also true. The more honest you become with yourself, the more the world around you begins to rearrange. You start to see things clearly: who adds to your life and who only takes, which paths nourish your growth and which keep you stuck. This clarity doesn't come from logic alone. It comes from alignment. Alignment happens when what you feel, what you believe, and what you do are no longer in conflict. That's when your energy becomes magnetic. That's when people begin to say, you've changed, and for once you don't feel the need to defend yourself. Because yes, you have changed. You've outgrown the skin that once fit you too tightly. You've outloved the patterns that kept you repeating old pain. And most importantly, you've outlived the lie that you had to be someone else to be worthy. Let's take this deeper. What do you still do today just to keep the peace? What do you tolerate in silence, telling yourself it's not worth the fight? What dreams do you still keep hidden because you're afraid they'll make others uncomfortable? That's your starting point. That's where your power has been sleeping. Begin there, not with judgment, not with blame, but with honesty. The world doesn't need a watered-down version of you. It doesn't benefit from your silence, your false humility, your self-sacrifice. What the world needs is you unfiltered, unpolished, unapologetically whole. And the moment you give yourself permission to be that, you no longer chase your worth. You carry it. Your presence changes the room not because you're louder, but because you're real. Because you radiate something that can't be fake: self-respect. And self-respect is contagious. It teaches others how to treat you. It redefines what you will and won't accept. It sets the tone not just for your relationships, but for your entire life. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. It's what happens when you stop negotiating your value and start embodying it. The mirror of relationships. Every person you get close to reflects something back to you. Some reflect your light, your potential, your joy, your capacity to love. Others mirror your wounds, your insecurities, your unresolved pain, the parts of you still waiting for healing. Carl Jung didn't view relationships as accidents. He saw them as invitations, portals into self-awareness. And whether the people in your life lift you up or weigh you down, each one is a messenger carrying a lesson you've been ready to learn. Let that sink in for a moment. Think about someone in your life who brings you peace. Maybe it's a friend, a partner, or even a stranger whose presence feels like sunlight. That connection isn't random. It's showing you what kind of energy you deserve. It's a reflection of the love and safety that already exists within you. Now think of the opposite. Someone who constantly criticizes, manipulates, or invalidates you. That connection also isn't random. It may be painful, but it's still a teacher. It may be showing you where your boundaries are too porous, where your self-worth is still conditional, where you're still trying to earn what should never have required effort, respect, kindness, dignity. When you begin to see relationships this way, everything changes. You stop chasing people who can't meet you where you are. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy. You stop mistaking pain for passion or drama for depth. Instead, you start choosing with clarity. You start asking not just, do they love me, but does this love align with who I'm becoming? That one question changes everything. You begin to walk away from relationships that cost you more than they give, not with bitterness, but with quiet resolution. You understand that just because something once felt right doesn't mean it still belongs in your life, and that's growth. You no longer cling out of fear of being alone because you've started to enjoy your own company. You don't settle for breadcrumbs of affection because you know how full love can actually feel when it's mutual, reciprocal, and safe. This is the beauty of rising self-worth. Your standards elevate not out of entitlement, but out of understanding. You realize you were never asking for too much, you were just asking the wrong people. Jung's teachings remind us that every ending, every rupture, every heartbreak carries with it an opportunity, not just to grieve, but to re-examine what you've been accepting in place of what you truly desire. So take inventory. Who in your life feels like a mirror of your highest self and who reflects your wounds back to you, disguised as love? There's no need to rush to conclusions. Just start noticing. Observe how your body feels around different people. Do you feel open or guarded, drained or inspired, at ease or on edge? That's your intuition speaking. And the more you listen, the more your life begins to filter itself. Some people will drift away, others will draw near, and what remains a circle that reflects your truth, a space that mirrors your wholeness, a life built not on compromise, but on connection that's rooted in self-respect. The most important relationship you'll ever have. There's a relationship that shapes every word you speak, every boundary you set, and every dream you dare to chase. It's not with a lover, not a parent, not a mentor or a friend. It's the relationship you have with yourself. Carl Jung understood this better than most. He believed that all outer conflict, confusion, and disharmony stem from one core issue: disconnection from the self. Not the mask you wear, not the version of you that adapts to get by, but the deep, anchored, eternal you, the part that existed before the world told you who to be. And the truth is, most of us were never taught how to relate to ourselves. We were taught how to achieve, how to please, how to perform, but rarely how to be with ourselves. Not in the quiet, not in the raw, not when the lights go off and the pretending ends. So we look for ourselves in other people, in the way they talk to us, in whether they stay or go, in how they reflect our worth or don't. But here's the secret: no relationship will ever feel truly safe until the one you have with yourself becomes a sanctuary. That's where it all begins. How do you speak to yourself when you fail? How do you hold yourself when you're grieving? How do you respond when fear shows up in the middle of the night? These moments define your self-relationship, not the big wins, but the tender ones, the quiet ones, the ones when no one is watching. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat with yourself in stillness, not scrolling, not solving, not fixing, but just being, just breathing, just asking, how are you really? When you do that, when you turn inward without an agenda, something begins to shift. You begin to see yourself not as a project, but as a person, not as a problem to fix, but as a presence to embrace. That's when self-love deepens. not through affirmations alone, but through relationship. You start to trust your own voice. You begin to honor your intuition even when it doesn't make sense to others. You offer yourself forgiveness for past choices, not because they didn't hurt, but because you finally understand the pain that led to them. And something beautiful happens when that inner relationship becomes stronger. You no longer crave from others what you've already given yourself. Validation becomes a bonus, not a necessity. Companionship becomes a choice, not a crutch. Love becomes something you give and receive freely, not something you chase to feel complete. This kind of wholeness is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but it radiates in everything you do, in how you walk, how you speak, how you hold your head when the world tries to make you doubt your worth. Jung would say this is individuation at work, not perfection, not transcendence, but full embodied conscious integration of your being. So here's your invitation. Start treating your inner world like it matters. Write to yourself. Speak to yourself kindly. Keep promises you make to your heart. Stop abandoning yourself every time someone else becomes uncomfortable with your truth. You are not here to spend your life performing worthiness. You are here to remember it, to embody it, to live from it so fully, so unapologetically, that everything you touch begins to shift in response. When wholeness becomes your compass, there is a moment quiet, often unnoticed, when something inside you changes. You no longer move from fear. You no longer chase what isn't chasing you. You no longer abandon your intuition just to keep the peace. And no, it's not because you become invincible or immune to doubt. It's because you finally come home to yourself, to wholeness, to that inner knowing that says, I may not have all the answers, but I trust myself to walk through the unknown anyway. Carl Jung didn't offer a roadmap for perfection. He didn't tell us to banish fear or erase uncertainty. He told us to integrate to become whole, to see that we are not just our brightest moments or our worst days. We are not defined by titles, followers, failures, or achievements. We are not only the laughter or only the tears. We are all of it, the strength and the softness, the courage and the confusion, the light and the shadow. And when you stop separating those parts, when you stop trying to be only one version of yourself, you begin to navigate life from a deeper truth, one that doesn't shift with external opinions or social expectations. This is what it means to move with wholeness as your compass. Suddenly, decisions become simpler. You no longer ask, what will they think? Instead, you ask, does this honor who I really am? You no longer measure success by how much you've accumulated, but by how aligned you feel with your purpose. You begin to walk away from what's loud but empty and toward what's quiet but true. Wholeness doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply is. It lives in the way you say no without guilt, in the way you protect your peace like it's sacred, in the way you stand still while others rush because you're not chasing, you're aligning. But here's something important to understand. Wholeness is not a destination. It's not a box you check or a finish line you cross. It's a relationship, one you tend to daily. There will be moments when old habits try to sneak back in, when doubt knocks on the door dressed as logic, when someone from your past tests the boundaries you've just built. And that's okay, because wholeness doesn't mean you never fall. It means you rise with more wisdom each time. It means that even when you get off track, you know how to come home to yourself again. Not with shame, but with gentleness. This is what makes you unstoppable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can make you forget your worth. So from this point on, let whole be your goal, not perfect, not pleasing, not performative. Whole, rooted, real. The kind of real that sets others free just by standing in your presence. Because when you live from that place, something extraordinary happens. Life starts responding to you differently. People treat you with more respect, not because they've changed, but because your energy no longer invites disrespect. Opportunities align more naturally, not because you're trying harder, but because you're no longer blocking them with self-doubt. You become a magnet for what reflects your truth, not your wounds. And everything you once thought you had to fight for begins to meet you with ease. The outer world mirrors the inner shift. Transformation doesn't begin with a big announcement. It begins quietly, in the way you start choosing differently, in the way you stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you, in the way you exit rooms that feel too small for your spirit without needing to slam the door. And then, almost without noticing, you look up and realize your world has changed. Not because the people around you suddenly became more kind, not because the circumstances outside of you magically aligned, but because you changed. You stopped negotiating with your own soul. You stopped begging for permission to exist in your fullness. You started walking as someone who knows their value instead of waiting for someone else to validate it. This is what Carl Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." You are not at the mercy of fate. You are the pattern breaker, the mirror holder, the one who dared to look inward and ask, "What have I been carrying that was never mine to hold?" And now that you've begun to release it, everything around you is shifting. You'll notice the people who once felt magnetic now feel misaligned. You'll notice that certain conversations no longer feed you, they drain you. And you'll walk away not with resentment, but with gratitude for the lesson and the freedom it gave you. New people will enter, people who speak your language not just in words but in energy. People who see you not as a role to fill, but as a whole being to honor. Your environments will start to change too. You'll be drawn to spaces that reflect who you're becoming, not who you had to be to survive. You'll stop tolerating chaos as a baseline. You'll begin choosing peace as your default, not the kind of peace that comes from avoidance, but the kind that's born of alignment. There's a phrase Jung used, often synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that arise when your inner world aligns with your outer world. And as your self-worth rises, synchronicities increase. Doors open that were once sealed shut. Opportunities arrive that feel right, not because they're perfect, but because they match your frequency. This is the beauty of inner work. You don't have to force change. You become it. And as you do, life bends to meet your truth. But here's something else: this shift is ongoing. There is no final arrival, no finish line where everything is perfect forever. Healing happens in spirals. You will revisit old wounds. You will question yourself again. You will have days where the voice of your past whispers louder than the clarity of your present. And that's not failure. That's evolution. Because every time you return to your center, you return a little faster, a little softer, a little more rooted in truth. That is what Jung was pointing us toward all along: not to become untouchable, but to become unshakable. Not by armor, but by awareness. By knowing who you are beneath the noise. By choosing to live as that person even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely, even when the old patterns beg you to come back. You won't, because once you've tasted the freedom of living in alignment, nothing else will satisfy you. Embodying your worth every single day. There's a quiet revolution that takes place when you stop treating self-worth as a concept and begin living it as a daily practice. Not just in the big decisions, but in the smallest choices. Not just when people are watching, but especially when they aren't. It's how you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. It's how you nourish your body when no one's keeping track. It's whether you say yes because you mean it or because you're afraid to say no. Carl Jung taught that real growth isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you are beneath the scripts, the survival strategies, the roles you perform so well that you nearly forgot you were acting. And remembering doesn't happen once. It happens every day in every moment that invites you to either abandon yourself or stand beside yourself. Because the world will keep testing you. You'll be offered opportunities that glitter but don't align. You'll meet people who admire the version of you that still knows how to shrink. You'll encounter voices, internal and external, whispering that you're not enough, not ready, not capable. But now you'll know better. You'll know the difference between a fear and a warning, between a desire and a distraction, between what feeds your soul and what just fills the silence. You'll begin treating your time like it matters because it does. You'll stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-committing, because your worth doesn't live in what you do, but in who you are. And every time you act from that place, you anchor deeper into your truth. It might look like choosing rest over productivity and refusing to feel guilty about it. It might look like walking away from someone who doesn't see your value and not looking back. It might look like starting a dream you've been postponing for years, not because the timing is perfect, but because you finally believe you're worthy of that dream. These aren't just choices. They're declarations. Declarations that say, I know who I am, and I'm done betraying that for comfort, approval, or fear. This is the core of embodiment. It's not just thinking different thoughts, it's moving differently in the world. It's a posture shift, a tone shift, a presence shift. People will feel it. They'll sense your groundedness, your clarity. Some will be drawn to it, others will be threatened by it. That's not your concern. Your job is not to manage anyone's reaction to your growth. Your job is to keep growing, to keep choosing yourself, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Not just when it's praised, but when it's misunderstood. Not just when you're feeling strong, but when you're shaking and unsure. Because that's what real worth is. It's not the absence of self-doubt, it's the refusal to let self-doubt dictate your life. It's not the elimination of all fear, it's the willingness to walk forward anyway. And here's the truth most people miss. When you live like this, you don't just change your life. You change the lives of everyone around you. You give others permission to do the same. Your courage becomes contagious. Your alignment becomes an example. Your presence becomes a lighthouse for those still lost in the fog of pretending. So wake up each day and ask yourself, how can I show up for me today? Not the performance, not the mask, not the edited version, but you. You in your power, you in your messiness, you in your clarity, you in your becoming. Because the more you live from that place, the more life will rise up to meet you there. The art of letting go with grace. There's a moment in every transformation when you're asked to release something, someone, some story, some part of your identity that no longer fits the person you're becoming. And this is where the real work begins. Because letting go isn't about giving up. It's about clearing space. It's about honoring the quiet truth that says, this chapter is over. But here's what makes letting go so hard, it often comes wrapped in grief. Even if what you're releasing was never truly good for you, even if it was built on fierce scarcity or pain, even if it hurt you, there's still a bond, a pattern, a sense of familiarity. Carl Jung understood this paradox deeply. He taught that most of our suffering doesn't come from the pain of loss itself, it comes from our resistance to it, from the belief that holding on equals loyalty, from the fear that if we let go, we'll be left with nothing. But the truth, letting go is not the end. It's the beginning of space, of possibility, of the self finally being free to evolve without dragging the weight of the past behind it. So pause, breathe. Ask yourself gently but honestly, what have I been carrying that is quietly crushing me? Is it the pressure to be someone you're not? The expectation of a relationship that no longer aligns? The fear of who you'll be without the roles you've clung to for safety? Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it anymore. You are allowed to set it down. You are allowed to say, I love what this once meant to me, but I no longer need it to move forward. That kind of surrender is not weakness. It's strength at its most refined. It's the moment your spirit says, I trust myself to walk into what's next, even if I don't know exactly where it leads. And from that trust, everything opens. The clarity you've been chasing arrives. The peace you've been praying for unfolds. The synchronicities become louder, more frequent, more aligned. You see, there are things life cannot bring you until your hands are empty enough to receive them. There are people who cannot find you while you're still wrapped in what was meant to be temporary. There are dreams that have been circling your soul like satellites waiting for you to say, I'm ready. But readiness requires release. It requires unclenching your fists. It requires standing in the space between what you've known and what you don't yet see and choosing faith over familiarity. This is not easy work, but it's sacred work. And every time you choose to let go, gracefully, intentionally, even if it hurts, you send a message to your unconscious mind, I believe in what's ahead more than I fear what I'm leaving behind. That is when you become unstoppable. Not because you're certain of what's coming, but because you're no longer tethered to what's keeping you stuck. You've stopped dragging the dead weight of expired versions of yourself. You've stopped living for a future written by your fears. You've begun living in the present raw, real unfiltered. And from here, you begin again. Not as someone reinvented, but as someone revealed. Becoming the architect of your own life. There's a turning point in every journey of self-discovery, a moment when the mirror you've been holding up to yourself becomes a window into the kind of life that's possible when you stop surviving and start creating. Up until now, you may have been reacting to life, responding to what shows up, managing what's handed to you, trying to keep the pieces together with whatever tools you were given. But here's the truth Jung pointed to again and again. Once you begin to know yourself, truly know yourself, you stop living by default. You begin to live by design. And that's not just poetic, that's practical. You become the architect of your days, the curator of your energy, the builder of your inner and outer world. Not from control, but from clarity. Because clarity is what changes everything. When you're clear about your values, you stop entertaining relationships that compromise them. When you're clear about your vision, you stop wasting time on things that drain you. When you're clear about your worth, you stop negotiating with people who can't meet you where you are. But clarity doesn't come from thinking alone. It comes from listening. Listening to your body, to your breath, to that subtle tug in your chest when you're veering off course. That still small voice that whispers, this doesn't feel like home. When you start listening, your life begins to reshape itself. You stop chasing things out of fear of missing out. You stop doing things just because that's what people do. You begin moving with intention, and with intention you become powerful. You begin choosing your routines instead of sleepwalking through them. You begin designing your environment to support your growth, not to impress others. You begin noticing what you consume, what you read, watch, and scroll through, not as background noise, but as nourishment or poison for your mind. This is the heart of conscious creation. It's not about perfect manifestation boards or 10-step plans. It's about presence. It's about waking up each morning and asking, how do I want to feel today? What do I need to honor myself today? What one action moves me closer to the life I want to live? Then doing that consistently with grace, not force. This isn't just about goals. It's about integrity. Living in integrity with yourself is the most magnetic state you can be in. When your words, actions, and intentions are aligned, the universe listens. Life begins to respond, not always instantly, but undeniably. Doors open, paths appear, people show up who feel like alignment, not obligation. You don't have to prove yourself, you become yourself. And in doing so, you start to build a life that isn't just bearable, but beautiful. Not because it's perfect, but because it finally feels like yours. So let this be your new mantra. I am not waiting for life to happen to me. I am shaping it from the inside out. One breath, one choice, one moment at a time. Because you're not just a product of your past. You are the artist of your becoming, and everything you've experienced, every heartbreak, every breakthrough, every whisper of intuition you once ignored is now material. Not to carry as weight, but to build with. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from wisdom. Living in alignment without losing yourself. When people begin to rise into their truth, when they finally align their inner and outer lives, something unexpected often happens. They burn out. Not because alignment is draining, but because they try to do it all at once. They try to reclaim every part of themselves, fix every flaw, cut every toxic tie chase, every long-lost dream all in one breath. And while that fire can feel exhilarating at first, it's not sustainable. Carl Jung understood this subtle trap. He knew that individuation, this journey into wholeness, is not a sprint. It's a lifetime unfolding, a spiral of becoming, not a checklist to complete. You are not here to be a spiritual overachiever. You are here to live fully, freely, and humanly. That includes rest, slowness, uncertainty, days that don't feel magical, moments when you forget everything you've learned and fall right back into an old version of yourself. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're still in process. Growth without grace becomes just another performance. Healing without pause becomes just another hustle. So let this chapter be a reminder balance is not a luxury. It's part of the work. It's easy to romanticize transformation, to think that once you wake up, life will stay permanently elevated, that once you love yourself, you'll never struggle again. But real alignment isn't about always feeling amazing. It's about staying honest when you don't. It's about noticing when you're slipping into old habits, not with shame, but with curiosity. It's about creating a rhythm in your life that supports both your expansion and your recovery. You weren't designed to be on all the time. The moon waxes and wanes. The seasons rise and fall. Even the ocean breathes. You are part of that rhythm. You are allowed to ebb, to pause, to pull back, to question, to not know. And still you are in alignment. Because alignment doesn't mean constant movement. It means consistent return. Returning to what matters. Returning to your breath when your mind spins out. Returning to your values when the world tempts you to forget them. Returning to your body when anxiety tries to live in your chest. Returning to your truth even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs you comfort, even when it means saying no to something that once felt like everything. That return is the real muscle you're building, not perfection, presence. And from that presence, you begin to create a life that flows, not one that forces. You learn when to push and when to rest, when to expand and when to retreat, when to speak and when to sit in sacred silence. This isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's maturity that says, I can be both powerful and gentle, both fierce and flexible, both driven and deeply at peace. And that's how you sustain your self-worth, not through performance, but through practice. So ask yourself, what does alignment look like today? Not in theory, but in practice. What would it mean to honor my energy, not just my ambition? What part of me have I been pushing too hard to grow instead of allowing it to unfold? The answers may not be loud. They may not be flashy, but they will be true. And truth, as Jung would remind us, is always enough. Trusting the whisper, your intuition as guide. There's a voice inside you that speaks before words form. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It doesn't argue with logic or beg for attention. It simply knows. And yet for most of us, that voice, the voice of intuition, has been drowned out by noise. Silenced by the conditioning that says, be reasonable, be careful, be realistic. We're taught to value data over discernment, planning over presence, certainty over feeling. But Carl Jung believed that true transformation begins when we return to that quiet inner guide, the one we abandoned long ago in favor of approval. He called it the inner knowing, the self, the unconscious speaking through images, dreams, sensations, gut feelings. This isn't mysticism, it's wisdom, ancient, deeply human, and always available. The problem isn't that we don't have intuition, it's that we don't trust it. We doubt it, second-guess it, override it with what's logical or smart. We outsource our decision-making to others, then wonder why our life doesn't feel like our own. But intuition doesn't live in the mind. It lives in the body. It shows up in the way your stomach clenches in the presence of someone you can't quite place, in the chill that runs through your spine when something doesn't feel right, in the warmth that rushes to your chest when you're about to say yes to something that deeply aligns. That's not anxiety. That's guidance. And the more you learn to hear it, the more you listen to it, the louder it becomes. Start small. Pay attention to how your body reacts before your brain kicks in. Notice the moments when something feels expansive versus restrictive. Watch how often you override your instincts just to keep someone else comfortable. That's where the work begins. Because your intuition isn't just a guide for survival, it's the blueprint for your deepest becoming. It will lead you into rooms where your soul is seen, not just your resume. It will push you out of dynamics that feel familiar but aren't healthy. It will nudge you toward the dreams you've buried because someone once told you they weren't realistic. And here's the beautiful part: intuition doesn't demand perfection. It simply asks for partnership. It doesn't need you to have a perfect plan. It needs you to pause long enough to feel. It needs you to stop looking outward and turn inward, to trust that even if you can't see the whole path yet, the next step will appear when it's time. And when you live from that place, life starts to unfold not just around you, but through you. Decisions come with more ease. Clarity cuts through confusion. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" as often as what feels true. That shift from mind to body, from noise to knowing, is what changes everything. So the next time you feel the urge to override your gut, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, is this fear or is this truth? Am I choosing from habit or from alignment? What would my intuition do if I actually listened? The more you ask, the more you trust. The more you trust, the more you're led. And when you let your inner compass guide you, not the opinions, not the pressure, not the past, you begin to build a life that feels less like survival and more like home, reclaiming joy as a way of being. When was the last time you truly allowed yourself to feel joy? Not the performative kind, the curated smiles for photos, the "I'm fine" energy that hides exhaustion, not the achievement-based joy that fades 5 minutes after a goal is checked off, but the real kind. The kind of joy that bubbles up unexpectedly, that arrives uninvited, that doesn't ask for permission, that lives in your breath, your belly, your bones. Carl Jung understood joy not as a surface emotion, but as a state that emerges when we live in alignment with our true self. Joy isn't the reward. It's the evidence, the natural byproduct of living without fragmentation. But here's what many of us have been taught: joy must be earned. Only after we work harder, heal deeper, give more. Only after the house is clean, the inbox is empty, the body is perfect. Only after we figured it all out. So we postpone our joy. We place it on the other side of a checklist. We make it conditional. But joy doesn't respond to pressure. It doesn't bloom in perfection. It grows in presence. It appears when you're not trying to be anything other than exactly who you are in the moment. You see it in the way light hits the wall in the early morning, in the warmth of coffee cupped in both hands, in music that finds your rhythm before your thoughts catch up. Joy lives in simplicity, but simplicity requires slowing down. It requires permission. And that's where the real block often lies, not in your ability to access joy, but in your willingness to allow it. Because joy is vulnerable. It asks you to soften, to open, to receive. And that can feel risky when you've lived guarded for years. When you've equated being serious with being safe. When joy has felt like a luxury you couldn't afford. But joy is not a luxury. It is your birthright, and it is also your medicine. It regulates your nervous system. It replenishes your energy. It reminds your inner child that life can still be beautiful even after all the pain. Joy doesn't require you to be healed. It helps you heal. So how do you reclaim it? Start small, start subtle, start now. Begin noticing what brings you warmth, what makes you smile without trying, what moments feel like sunlight on your skin. Make space for those moments. Prioritize them like you would any sacred ritual, not to escape life, but to remember how to live it. Take joy seriously, not in formality, but in devotion. Let laughter be loud in your home. Let silliness break your silence. Let softness sit next to your strength, because joy doesn't weaken your transformation. It powers it. Jung might say that joy is the soul's way of saying, this is who we are when we stop pretending. So allow it. Let joy in without guilt, without delay, without justification. Not because everything is perfect, but because you finally are whole awake and willing to feel. Integrating the self-becoming who you already are. Transformation is not just about breakthrough moments. It's about what you do with them. It's one thing to awaken, to realize your worth, to shed what no longer fits, to reclaim your voice. That's the spark. That's the ignition. But what comes next is integration. Integration is where your evolution roots itself into your daily life. It's where the ideas become actions, where the insights become embodiment, where the healing becomes habits. Carl Jung often spoke of individuation as the process of becoming whole, not by changing into something new, but by returning to who you always were. It's not about adding more. It's about remembering, reclaiming, reuniting the fragmented parts of yourself that were once cast out to survive. And this stage, the integration stage, is often the most misunderstood because it's not always glamorous. It looks like discipline, like repetition, like having the same hard conversation 3 times until your nervous system learns it's safe to speak up. It looks like waking up one day full of certainty and the next full of doubt and still choosing the path that aligns with your truth. It looks like pausing in the middle of a busy moment to check in with yourself, asking, am I honoring me right now? It looks like saying no even when your voice shakes, saying yes when it terrifies you, walking away without the need to explain, staying when staying is rooted in self-respect, not fear. Integration doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be present, to stop spiritualizing your pain and start living your healing, to embody what you know, not to impress, not to perform, but because anything less feels like betrayal now. And here's the gift. The more you live in alignment, the more natural it becomes. Not because life gets easier, but because you get clearer. Your decisions come quicker. Your boundaries feel cleaner. Your relationships reflect your wholeness, not your wounds. People may still challenge you. Old temptations may return. Old stories may whisper. But you won't be the same person who once listened to them. You've integrated now. You've seen yourself in the mirror, shadow and all, and you've said you're still worthy. You've met your fear with compassion. You've answered your inner voice with action. You've honored your pain without becoming it. And that changes everything. Not instantly, not permanently, but truly. You begin to live with a quiet confidence, not loud or boastful, but steady. You walk differently, speak differently, hold space differently. People may ask what changed, and you won't always have words. Because the truth is, this kind of growth doesn't need to be explained. It's felt. You're no longer just surviving your life, you're inhabiting it with intention, with integrity, with the unshakable knowledge that you're enough not because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you've become. And who you've become is someone who no longer seeks wholeness outside, because you've found it within. Nothing can stop you. Now take a breath. Not the shallow kind you take to get through the day. A real one. Deep, honest, fully yours. Inhale everything you've discovered. Exhale everything you're ready to leave behind. You've come so far, not just in words, not just in ideas, but in presence, in self-recognition, in remembering. You started this journey with a feeling, something unnameable stirring beneath the surface, whispering, there's more for you. And now here you are, no longer waiting, no longer pretending, no longer living on autopilot. You've peeled back the layers, faced the shadows, spoken with your soul, and chosen to listen. And in doing so, you've come home to the one person who always held the key you. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And now you've stepped into that privilege. You've learned that self-worth isn't a goal, it's a state. Not a mountain you climb once, but a ground you stand on daily. Not about becoming someone better, but finally being someone real. You are no longer the person begging to be chosen. You are the person choosing what stays and what must go, choosing what you allow to touch your energy, your heart, your body, choosing what future you'll build not based on what's expected, but on what feels true. And from this place, nothing can stop you, not because life won't try, but because you now walk with a kind of resilience that isn't made of steel, but of soul. You've touched your fear and kept walking. You've embraced your flaws and called them your teachers. You've learned how to protect your peace value, your truth, and honor your joy. You've become a lighthouse, steady, grounded, unshaken by passing storms. And now the world feels different because you are different. Not louder, not flashier, just clearer. And clarity is magnetic. So as you move forward into your next chapter, your next decision, your next breath, remember this. You don't need more time. You don't need more proof. You don't need permission. You are ready now to love without losing yourself, to rise without asking for approval, to dream without doubting your worthiness. You are no longer becoming, you are whole, powerful, awake. And the life you're meant for, the one that reflects who you are rather than who you've been told to be, is already reaching back toward you. So take that step, say the words, write the story, make the change, set the boundary, answer the call. Because this world doesn't need a more polished version of you. It needs you raw, radiant, real. And from this moment forward, nothing, not fear, not rejection, not uncertainty can stop you. Because you've remembered your power, and once remembered, it can never be forgotten. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are exactly where you're meant to be, at the start of everything true. And I'll be here cheering for you, walking with you, believing in you every step of the way. Now go live it. The real you has waited long enough.